Erev Shabbat Shalom, Parashat Vayigash, the fast of Asara B'Tevet. A few years ago, I was at a family simcha, and one of my uncles, Professor Michael Tobin, Zichrono Livracha, came over to me after laning and shows me the last Rashi on Parashat Vayigash, which seems pretty cryptic, because when the Torah describes the fact that the nation of Israel, Am Yisrael, or the family of Yaakov Avinu goes down to Mitzrayim, to Egypt, Vayeshev Yisrael be'eretz Mitzrayim be'eretz Goshen, Vayachzu ba vayifru vayirbu me'od. And Rashi says on Vayachzu ba, they held on to it. Rashi says Leshon achuzah, it means holding on to. So what is Rashi trying to tell us here? Just telling us that the word means the same word. One of the first rules I learned when I was learning English grammar was you can't define a term with the same term. So what is Rashi trying to tell us? Vayachzu, Leshon achuzah. What is he trying to tell us? That the shoresh is Aleph Chet Zayin. We'll try and understand that a bit. Rav Shmuel Yosef Zevin in his Sefer LeTorah U'Moadim describes there are two types of achiza, of holding on to something. There are positive holding on to things like achazti v'lo arpenu, like holding on to a loved one, like in Shir HaShirim. And there are negative types of holding on to things, just like we're getting caught. We remember the pasuk from the Akedah where the ram is caught in the bushes in the Akedah. His horns are caught in the bushes, or as Kohelet describes, fish that get caught in a net, kedagim shene'echazim b'metzudah. So le'achez or le'echoz, to hold on, means to get stuck with something, to hold on to something steadfast, to hold on to it very strongly, and something that actually turns into something permanent, which is very hard to separate, very hard to dismantle, very hard to change. And when we understand that, we understand that what the Torah is telling us about Am Yisrael going down to Egypt is not that it's not only that they went there and that they lived there, but they held on to Egypt. Leshon achuzah. The Torah in Sefer Vayikra describes Sde achuzah. Sde achuzah is a land which a person receives as inheritance and goes on from generation to generation. When Rashi tells us that Vayachzu is Leshon achuzah, it means that Am Yisrael not only went down to Egypt, not only had to live there, but they regarded Egypt as their permanent place for a long, long time. And that is where the Gola starts. Because the decree that Am Yisrael had to go down to Egypt is described as Kiger Yezaracha Beretz Lo Lahem. They will be foreign people in Egypt. And that was the decree of the Gzirah of the Galut. But Am Yisrael, where the problem really started, when Am Yisrael started regarding it as a permanent thing. And that is where Galut really starts. When the Jew himself looks at the temporary situation that he's in and decides or thinks that this temporary situation should be permanent, or turns something that isn't ideal and starts idealizing it. And we know that we Baruch Hashem are living in Israel, but there are a lot of people who have issues who are living in Chutz La'aretz, and one of the big issues is that sometimes they think that Chutz La'aretz is ideal. We can stay here for generations. And that is the conceptual problem is the real essence of the Galut. But for us, I think we need to look at it in a wider span. And we all have situations where they should be temporary, but we turn them too much into something permanent. Yeah, as the saying says, there's nothing more permanent than something temporary. But especially over the past year, we've gotten used to certain different behaviors. If it's personally not shaking hands and social distancing, and learning from afar and Zoom instead of meeting together, and even davening faster and sometimes without a minyan, and wrapping it up. Sometimes we feel comfortable with some of these things. One of my children told me a week ago, he says, I definitely like the Zoom. I don't need to run to school. I can get up later and things like that. And that is where the problem actually starts, when we start idealizing the temporary situation we're in. We shouldn't be in a situation where it turns into achuzah, into a type of things that goes on and on and on. But always remember, it should be like a ger. It's something that's temporary, feel temporary, even though it's taking a long time. B'ezrat Hashem, hopefully we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel with the vaccination. Baruch Hashem, going very well in Israel over the past week, and hopefully even quicker in the next few weeks. But we should always think to ourselves, not forget the good things that we need to get back to. Yeah, a good, nice, relaxed davening and singing together and meeting each other and shaking hands and all the good things that we want to get back to. We shouldn't get used to the temporary things. So we can take a lot of good things we learned from this situation, but B'ezrat Hashem, hope to get back to normal as quick as possible and not get stuck in the temporary kavua things that B'ezrat Hashem will finish so soon. Shabbat Shalom.